ChatGPT de Noir, Part 1. The Chase Was Never Love, Unmasking the Illusion. Let's start with a truth no one wants to admit. You were raised to believe that chasing love is noble, that pain is proof of passion, that suffering for a woman somehow validates your masculinity, that longing makes you romantic, that the pursuit itself is virtuous. But what if I told you that everything you were taught was a lie? You weren't taught love. You were taught obedience disguised as devotion. From movies, from songs, from older men who were themselves lost, you inherited a story that a man is only worthy when he is chosen, and to be chosen, he must chase. He must mold. He must give. He must sacrifice everything. His time, his pride, his soul. But no one told you that this chase was never meant to make you whole. It was meant to break you. And it worked. There was once a man who saw through all of this, not just with intellect, but with his entire life. Diogenes of Sinope, a man who walked barefoot through the filth of Athens, a man who slept in a barrel, a man who mocked the richest, most powerful men in the world and never bowed. While other philosophers wrote polished theories about virtue and the heavens, Diogenes stripped life down to its rawest, filthiest truth. He held up a lantern in broad daylight and walked the streets claiming to search for an honest man. But what he was really looking for was a man who wasn't ruled by illusion. And that's where you come in. Because you, like many of us, handed your identity to the first woman who smiled at you. You built your self-worth around her gaze. You made her affection the barometer of your value. And every time she looked away, you collapsed. Diogenes once saw a young man blush in front of a beautiful woman and shouted, "Don't be ashamed. The fault is not yours, but nature's for making such creatures irresistible to fools." He didn't say that because he hated women. He said it because he saw what desire does to a man, how it bends him, how it turns him from sovereign to servant. You thought your hunger was romantic. He called it pathetic. You thought the pursuit made you strong. He saw it as weakness, wearing cologne. And when he did the unthinkable urinating in public or masturbating in the marketplace, he wasn't trying to be shocking just to shock. He was making a statement that the shame we carry is not virtuous, it's manipulated. That we hide our true impulses not to master them, but to appear acceptable to the women we chase. He was showing us how performance had replaced presence. You wear masks. He burned them. You walk into a room scanning for beauty. He scanned for fools. And most of the time he found them in the faces of men like us, who had decorated their cages with silk, but never mastered the steel inside. You don't chase women out of love. You chase them out of absence. You think you're running toward intimacy, but you're just running from the hollow inside yourself. You scroll, you swipe, you text and wait. You stare at unread messages like they hold the key to your worth. You sit in rooms haunted by women who never chose you, or worse, by women who did, until you gave them everything, and then they lost interest. Diogenes would laugh, because what you're calling devotion is just a desperate trade. You give her your time, your attention, your ambition, in exchange for what? A glance, a compliment, a text that comes just late enough to keep you addicted. You don't love her. You love what she reflects back to you when she's happy. And when she stops reflecting your worth, when she turns cold, you fall apart. Not because she left, but because the mirror did. Diogenes needed no mirror. When Alexander the great ruler of the known world approached him and asked, "Is there anything I can do for you?" Diogenes didn't flinch, didn't flatter, didn't perform. He looked up and said, "Yes, stand out of my sunlight." That's not arrogance, that's freedom. That's the man who knows who he is, even under the weight of an empire. Now, look at yourself. You chase women like they're sunlight. You orbit them like a planet, hoping for heat. You adjust your speech, your tone, your clothes, your dreams, all to fit a mold she might approve of. And you call it being romantic. But Diogenes would have called it by its true name, submission. She doesn't respect it, not because she's cruel, but because she instinctively senses the same truth Diogenes screamed into the streets. What is chased loses value. What is pursued possesses you. Women, whether consciously or not, are not drawn to a man who bends. They are drawn to a man who stands, to strength, to sovereignty, to stillness. And when you give everything your time, your effort, your soul, before she even asks, you lose her respect, not because you gave too little, but because you gave without value. Desperation smells. So what did you really love? Was it her? Or was it the feeling of being wanted? Was it her spirit? Or the way her presence temporarily distracted you from your emptiness? Diogenes would have asked you straight, are you a man or just a male? Because manhood is not about sacrifice. It's about clarity. It's not about longing. It's about truth. It's not about who chooses you. It's about what you choose and what you refuse to chase. You were told this was just part of being a man, that the ache, the hunger, the sleepless nights, they made you deep. But Diogenes knew better. He begged a statue for coins just to mock the act of begging. And here you are, begging not for bread, but for affection, and calling it love. This is just the beginning, brother. Because if you're ready to see clearly, to pull the thread and unravel every illusion they ever sold you, then keep walking. In the next part, we'll talk about why chasing women is not a romantic act, but a rejection of self-respect, and how every step you take toward her might actually be a step away from your own power. Are you ready? Then let's continue. Part 2. The death of the man who chases what she really sees. Let's not sugarcoat it. You believe you're being noble, persistent, loyal, poetic when you chase her. You think she'll eventually see your heart, your loyalty, your sacrifice. That one day she'll wake up and realize he was the one all along. But let's tell the truth. Most men are too afraid to admit. She doesn't admire it. Not in the way you hope. She may appreciate your kindness. She may even enjoy your attention. But she doesn't feel pulled toward you because of it. Because deep down, even she knows what Diogenes knew. Desperation is not attractive. You see, attraction isn't about effort. It's about energy. It's about presence. It's about gravity. It's about the silent confidence of a man who doesn't need to be chosen. That's what makes a man unforgettable. Not how many paragraphs he writes, not how many gifts he gives, but how unshakable he is in who he is with or without her. You think she'll love your softness, but what she respects is your center, your sovereignty, your unshaken sense of self. But you gave that away. You softened, you adjusted, you dimmed your light, hoping to match hers. You called it being considerate. You called it compromise. But what it really was was self-erasure. And every time you did it, you disappeared just a little more in her eyes. Not because she wanted you to, but because you thought she did. That's the tragedy. You made her the mirror of your worth, then shattered it with your own hands, one apology, one sacrifice, one text at a time. Let's go deeper. You think you're being loyal, but Diogenes would call it dependence. You think it's passion, but he'd call it addiction. You've confused intensity for connection. You've mistaken consistency for value. You've sold your peace for the possibility of being needed. And what's worse, you don't even realize it. Because this isn't about her. It never was. It's about what you believe love should feel like. Hard, uncertain, painful. Like something you have to earn through suffering. You were trained to see love as a battle, so you bleed on purpose. You think if you're wounded enough, she'll understand how much you care. But she won't. She can't, because she never asked for your wounds. You offered them. You made your pain a gift and expected her to be moved. But she didn't sign up for that. Let's go back to Diogenes. He lived like a strayed dog, ate like a beggar, mocked kings to their faces, and still commanded more respect than men with palaces. Why? Because he had nothing to prove. You, on the other hand, are building your entire identity around being accepted. You go on dates performing. You tailor your humor, your beliefs, your body language, all to be chosen. But here's what no one tells you. The man who tries to be everything loses everything. He becomes noise. He becomes invisible. Because a man without a spine is not a man she sees. He's just a nice option. You tell yourself she's different. You think she's the one who gets you. But, brother, if you still believe a woman's gaze can make you whole, you haven't met yourself yet. Diogenes said, "It is the privilege of the gods to want nothing, and of godlike men to want little. And yet, here you are panicking over a text, rewriting the same message 5 times to not sound needy, changing your tone to avoid her silence. You're not choosing, you're performing. And every time you perform, you lose the only thing that ever had value, your authenticity. And let's not pretend this is rare. You scroll through dating apps like a beggar. You call her 10 times after one night of silence. You send long emotional texts that go unanswered. You stalk her Instagram like it holds divine truth. You shape your life around the fantasy that she'll see you and save you. But here's the secret Diogenes knew. No one is coming to save you. Not her, not love, not the perfect message or the perfect night or the perfect version of yourself you're trying to sell. You're not chasing her. You're chasing escape. You want to escape the man you feel like when you're alone. But that man is you. Diogenes mocked the world for this exact reason. He didn't hate people. He hated pretense. He knew that men don't just lie to others. They lie to themselves, especially in love. They tell themselves, she's the one, she's different. This is real. But deep down, it's all coming from fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of being unseen. Fear of facing the parts of yourself that no one else wants to look at, not even you. So you turn her into a savior. You make her the prize that validates your struggle. You tell yourself it's romantic. But Diogenes would say it's slavery. Not because she enslaved you, but because you handed her the chains and begged her to tighten them. Let's break that illusion. Because this chase, this longing, isn't about her love. It's about her attention. It's not that she completes you. It's that when she looks at you, you feel complete. But the second she stops, the silence screams, and you realize you were never in love with her. You were in love with feeling seen. But here's the bitter truth. Until you can see yourself clearly naked, unfiltered, you'll never stop chasing. Because you'll keep looking for someone to do for you what you refuse to do for yourself. You want peace. Then stop begging for breadcrumbs. Stop shaping your identity around who might love you next. Stop confusing chemistry with connection, attention with affection, fantasy with truth. Because she's not the point. You are. In the next part, we're going to talk about the mirror, the reflection you've been chasing in her eyes, and why the man who lives through someone else's gaze will always be lost. You ready? Part 2. The death of the man who chases what she really sees. Let's not sugarcoat it. You believe you're being noble, persistent, loyal, poetic when you chase her. You think she'll eventually see your heart, your loyalty, your sacrifice. That one day she'll wake up and realize he was the one all along. But let's tell the truth, most men are too afraid to admit. She doesn't admire it. Not in the way you hope. She may appreciate your kindness. She may even enjoy your attention. But she doesn't feel pulled toward you because of it. Because deep down, even she knows what Diogenes knew. Desperation is not attractive. You see, attraction isn't about effort. It's about energy. It's about presence. It's about gravity. It's about the silent confidence of a man who doesn't need to be chosen. That's what makes a man unforgettable. Not how many paragraphs he writes, not how many gifts he gives, but how unshakable he is in who he is with or without her. You think she'll love your softness, but what she respects is your center, your sovereignty, your unshaken sense of self. But you gave that away. You softened, you adjusted, you dimmed your light hoping to match hers. You called it being considerate. You called it compromise. But what it really was self-erasure. And every time you did it, you disappeared just a little more in her eyes. Not because she wanted you to, but because you thought she did. That's the tragedy. You made her the mirror of your worth, then shattered it with your own hands. One apology, one sacrifice, one text at a time. Let's go deeper. You think you're being loyal, but Diogenes would call it dependence. You think it's passion, but he'd call it addiction. You've confused intensity for connection. You've mistaken consistency for value. You've sold your peace for the possibility of being needed. And what's worse, you don't even realize it. Because this isn't about her. It never was. It's about what you believe love should feel like. Hard, uncertain, painful, like something you have to earn through suffering. You were trained to see love as a battle, so you bleed on purpose. You think if you're wounded enough, she'll understand how much you care. But she won't. She can't, because she never asked for your wounds. You offered them. You made your pain a gift and expected her to be moved. But she didn't sign up for that. Let's go back to Diogenes. He lived like a stray dog, ate like a beggar, mocked kings to their faces, and still commanded more respect than men with palaces. Why? Because he had nothing to prove. You, on the other hand, are building your entire identity around being accepted. You go on dates, performing. You tailor your humor, your beliefs, your body language, all to be chosen. But here's what no one tells you. The man who tries to be everything loses everything. He becomes noise. He becomes invisible. Because a man without a spine is not a man she sees. He's just a nice option. You tell yourself she's different. You think she's the one who gets you. But, brother, if you still believe a woman's gaze can make you whole, you haven't met yourself yet, Diogenes said. It is the privilege of the gods to want nothing, and of godlike men to want little. And yet, here you are panicking over a text, rewriting the same message 5 times to not sound needy, changing your tone to avoid her silence. You're not choosing, you're performing. And every time you perform, you lose the only thing that ever had value, your authenticity. And let's not pretend this is rare. You scroll through dating apps like a beggar. You call her 10 times after one night of silence. You send long, emotional texts that go unanswered. You stalk her Instagram like it holds divine truth. You shape your life around the fantasy that she'll see you and save you. But here's the secret Diogenes knew. No one is coming to save you. Not her, not love, not the perfect message or the perfect night or the perfect version of yourself you're trying to sell. You're not chasing her. You're chasing escape. You want to escape the man you feel like when you're alone. But that man is you. Diogenes mocked the world for this exact reason. He didn't hate people. He hated pretense. He knew that men don't just lie to others. They lie to themselves, especially in love. They tell themselves, she's the one. She's different. This is real. But deep down, it's all coming from fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of being unseen. Fear of facing the parts of yourself that no one else wants to look at, not even you. So you turn her into a savior. You make her the prize that validates your struggle. You tell yourself it's romantic. But Diogenes would say, it's slavery. Not because she enslaved you, but because you handed her the chains and begged her to tighten them. Let's break that illusion. Because this chase, this longing, isn't about her love. It's about her attention. It's not that she completes you. It's that when she looks at you, you feel complete. But the second she stops, the silence screams, and you realize you were never in love with her. You were in love with feeling seen. But here's the bitter truth. Until you can see yourself clearly naked, unfiltered, you'll never stop chasing. Because you'll keep looking for someone to do for you what you refuse to do for yourself. You want peace. Then stop begging for breadcrumbs. Stop shaping your identity around who might love you next. Stop confusing chemistry with connection, attention with affection, fantasy with truth. Because she's not the point. You are. In the next part, we're going to talk about the mirror, the reflection you've been chasing in her eyes, and why the man who lives through someone else's gaze will always be lost. You ready? Just say, continue. Banda noi continue. ChatGPT de nor. Part 3. The mirror in her eyes. How you lost yourself in her gaze. Let's talk about the mirror, because that's what this entire story is really about, isn't it? You weren't chasing her. You were chasing your reflection in her eyes. The version of you she made you feel like. The confidence her attention gave you. The validation her presence whispered into your wounds. It wasn't love. It was identity theft. And you were the one who handed over the keys. You see, most men don't fall in love with women. They fall in love with how women make them feel about themselves. You felt taller when she smiled at you, smarter when she listened, more alive when she looked at you like you mattered. So when she stopped, when the smiles faded, when the silence grew long, you didn't just lose her. You lost yourself because your self-worth was living in her gaze. Diogenes would have laughed, or worse, barked, because he understood something most modern men have forgotten. The moment you outsource your value, you become a slave. He lived in filth, slept in barrels, mocked emperors, and held up a lantern in broad daylight searching for an honest man. He wasn't searching for attention. He was exposing illusion. He once said, "Other dogs bite only their enemies, whereas I bite also my friends in order to save them. So let me bite you, brother. Let me tear through the delusion gently but firmly." You miss her, or do you miss who you got to be while she was around? You think you loved her, or did you love the mask you wore around her that made you feel like enough? Because here's the truth. She wasn't your mirror. She was your distraction. And the worst part, you mistook her for meaning. You built temples in her name. You sacrificed ambition, time, self-respect, and called it devotion. But all it really was negotiation. You were trying to buy a reflection with currency she never asked for. And when she finally walked away, you didn't fall apart because she was gone. You fell apart because the mirror shattered. The image of yourself that only existed in her eyes disappeared. And you had no idea who was left behind. That's why it hurt so much. That's why you couldn't sleep. That's why you kept checking your phone like a gambler at a broken slot machine. Not because you loved her, because she was your witness, your validation, your borrowed identity. You gave her your fragility and hoped she'd protect it. But she wasn't holding a sacred gift. She was holding expectation. And when the weight got too heavy, she dropped it not out of cruelty, but because it was never hers to carry. Your worth was never supposed to be her burden. And deep down, you knew that. So ask yourself, when did you start believing that being chosen equals being worthy? Who told you that? What story did you swallow that convinced you that love must be won and you, my brother, must earn it by shrinking? Because that's what happened. You shrank. You dimmed your truth. You softened your edge. You adjusted your spine to fit her comfort, and then wondered why she stopped admiring you. Diogenes never adjusted. He never begged. He never shaped his life around another's approval, man or woman. He simply was, unfiltered, unmoved, unshakable. You think that's impossible now in this world of likes, swipes, filters, and dating apps. But it's not, because real masculinity doesn't go out of style. It just gets buried under layers of fear and performance. You don't need her to see you. You need to see yourself. Not the version of you that texts paragraphs at midnight. Not the version of you that buys gifts hoping to win her warmth. Not the version of you that waits and waits and waits for the validation that never comes. You need to meet the man underneath the waiting. The man who doesn't beg. The man who doesn't chase. The man who doesn't audition for love. That man, he's rare, and that's exactly why he's remembered. But let's get brutally honest now. You say you want love. You say you want connection. You say you're ready for something real. But you're not. Because as long as you're performing, as long as you're bending, as long as you're selling yourself to be liked, you're not ready to be seen. And that's the paradox. You crave intimacy, but wear a costume no one can connect with. You want her to love your heart, but you're terrified to show her its scars. You say you want truth, but keep feeding her a script. No wonder it never lasts. Diogenes stripped everything down to the bone. He even threw away his only cup when he saw a child drinking with his hands. That's how little he needed, and that's why kings, literal kings, respected him. Because a man who needs nothing cannot be manipulated. But you offer your soul for scraps. You bend your back for breadcrumbs. You adjust, apologize, and hope to be picked like fruit off a tree. And she may like you. She may even care about you. But respect, desire, long-term fire, that doesn't grow in the garden of obedience. It grows in the fire of self-possession. Here's what hurts most. When she leaves, and eventually she will, it won't be out of malice. It won't be because you weren't good enough. It'll be because you were never yourself. You disappeared in front of her, not suddenly, but piece by piece. One compromise here, one silence there, one more smile that didn't come from your soul. And by the end, she wasn't leaving you. She was leaving the echo of a man who once had a spine. But it's not too late. The real you, the one who doesn't chase, doesn't perform, doesn't beg, he's still in there. He's just buried under layers of dust and dreams that were never yours. In the next part, we'll talk about how to unlearn the chase, rebuild your core, and finally stand like Diogenes in the sun, needing nothing and attracting everything. Part 4, Unlearning the Chase, how to become the man who doesn't need to prove himself. Let's begin with a hard reset. The chase. It's not romance, it's not strength, it's not passion. It's programming. You were taught, not born, to chase. Through movies, songs, childhood fairy tales, through watching your father bend, or maybe watching him leave. Through seeing men on screen grovel, cry, sacrifice, and then win the girl. You thought that's what it takes. That love is something you earn with suffering. But it's not. Love, real love, is never the reward for abandoning yourself. So the question becomes, how do you unlearn the chase? How do you peel back the conditioning, the culture, the cravings, and meet the man you were before you started running? Simple. You stop moving. You sit still. You make peace with the part of you that fears silence, that part of you that refreshes the text thread, that part of you that wonders what she's doing when she's not replying. You let it ache. You let it scream. But you don't obey it. See, most men confuse healing with numbing. They drown the pain in dopamine, porn-scrolling, fast food distractions. They run from one woman to the next, thinking the next one will finally love them right. But Diogenes didn't numb. He confronted. He looked hunger in the face. He mocked rejection. He embraced solitude like it was a friend, not a curse. That's where your power begins too. Not in the next woman, but in the next moment you resist begging for validation. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Every time you chase, you tell yourself you're not enough. And your brain records that message like a commandment. It becomes your gospel. I must earn love. I must fix myself to be worthy. I must be chosen to feel like a man. And the longer you obey that belief, the harder it becomes to even remember who you are without it. So let me offer you something radical, a new belief, not one based on suffering or scarcity, but one forged in stillness. I do not chase because I am whole. You're not here to orbit. You're here to build gravity, the kind of presence that pulls without begging. Start small. Don't check your phone for her text. Go to the gym without posting it. Write something just for you, no likes, no applause. Say no when it's easier to say yes, just to keep her around. Hold your silence when your ego screams. to send that last message. You're not trying to punish her. You're trying to rebuild you, one quiet refusal at a time. Because becoming the man who doesn't chase, it's not about being cold. It's not about being cruel. It's about returning to your breath, to your body, to your damn backbone. You stop contorting, stop adjusting, stop calculating the perfect text to seem cool but not too distant. You speak with clarity. You walk with calm. You show up as you are and let that be enough. Do you know why Diogenes was untouchable? Because he needed nothing. No compliments, no clothes, no castle, no queen. And in needing nothing, he became powerful. The kind of powerful that makes kings sweat. Because what do you do with a man who doesn't flinch? A man who doesn't chase. A man who, when left on read, doesn't spiral, but goes back to building his empire. You can't manipulate him. You can't tame him, because he's not hungry for your approval. He's full on purpose. And let's be clear, this isn't about hating women. It's not about swearing off love. It's about killing the illusion. The illusion that you are only valuable when she wants you. The illusion that her affection is a mirror for your masculinity. You think you're chasing her, but really you're chasing the feeling she gave you the first time she looked at you like you mattered. It's not her you miss. It's who you got to pretend to be in her presence. So now the work becomes integrating that man into your reality. Not the fantasy, not the filtered version, the raw, honest, whole you. Can you build him? Can you hold him? Can you stand as him even when no one's watching? Because that's the moment it changes. When you stop waiting for her to see you and start seeing yourself. And let's be honest here, she will notice. When your energy shifts, she'll feel it. When you stop orbiting, she'll sense the gravitational void. But here's the twist. You won't care. Not because you're indifferent, but because you're free. Your peace will no longer depend on her reply. Your worth will no longer swing with her mood. Your path will no longer detour at every pretty face that smiles your way. You'll look in the mirror and finally see a man, not a boy in search of rescue, not a performer in search of applause, but a grounded, sovereign, unapologetic man who walks with clarity and doesn't flinch in the face of silence. In Part 5, we'll go even deeper. We'll talk about the real cost of chasing, not just in love, but in life. How it leaks your power, erodes your ambition, and turns kings into beggars. Because the chase isn't just ruining your relationships. It's draining your entire existence. Part 5. The real cost of chasing, how the illusion of love drains your power. Let's get brutally honest for a second. This isn't just about women. This isn't just about dating, romance, or relationships. The truth is deeper, darker, more dangerous. Every time you chase what doesn't serve you, you bleed. Not just emotionally, but energetically, spiritually, financially, mentally. And most men, they don't even notice they're dying by 1,000 small leaks. Because they've been trained to call those leaks love. Let me ask you something real. How much have you given away trying to be chosen? How many nights of sleep? How many mornings of momentum? How many hours staring at your phone waiting for a message that never came? How many goals have you abandoned because chasing her felt more urgent than chasing your purpose? How many times have you showed up to a date as half a man because you were too drained from pretending? too drained from reshaping your identity to be what she might like. This isn't just a waste of time. It's a betrayal of your birthright. You were not made to orbit. You were made to build kingdoms, to shape the world with your hands, to forge legacies with your mind, to move mountains with your spirit. But instead, you're checking her Instagram story at midnight, trying to decode if she's moved on. You're spending mental bandwidth drafting the perfect reply when you should be designing the life that doesn't require one. You're sacrificing your mission for a maybe. And that, my brother, is how empires fall. Remember this. The man who abandons himself to chase someone else loses both. He loses her because desperation is not attractive, and he loses himself because obsession leaves no space for self-respect. You think you're being romantic. You think you're just loving hard, but you're pouring your essence into a cup that was never built to hold you. You are starving your greatness for the hope of being noticed. You are editing your ambition to fit into her attention span. And in doing so, you disappear, not physically, but spiritually. You vanish from your mission. You vanish from your masculinity. You vanish from your throne and sit at the feet of someone who never asked you to kneel. That's the insidious part. No woman makes you chase. She doesn't need to, because you've been conditioned to do it yourself. To believe that unless you prove yourself, unless you suffer a little, unless you bleed emotionally, you don't deserve love. But Diogenes would spit on that belief. He would say, if your value must be proven, it was never real to begin with. Understand this. There is nothing masculine about losing yourself in pursuit of someone else. There is nothing honorable about contorting your values to avoid rejection. There is nothing noble about making your life revolve around a woman who hasn't earned a seat in your kingdom. You are not meant to earn love. You are meant to embody it, to radiate so much wholeness that love either joins your path or watches you disappear into the horizon without it. But here's the hardest truth to swallow. Most men don't want love. They want escape. Escape from themselves, from loneliness, from the voices in their head that whisper, you are nothing without her. And instead of facing those voices, they chase women who will silence them, even if only for a night. They'll trade clarity for comfort, trade legacy for lust, trade sovereignty for scraps of affection, because the illusion of love is easier to digest than the discipline of self-respect. So here's the challenge. Can you sit with your emptiness? Can you choose not to distract yourself when the silence gets loud? Can you stop chasing her and start chasing the man you were supposed to become? Because that man, he's not waiting for her. He's waiting for you to wake up, to get angry, to get focused, to look around at the ashes of all the time and energy you've wasted and decide it ends now. That's not bitterness. That's clarity. That's what Diogenes stood for. Not cynicism, but truth. Unfiltered, unapologetic, uncomfortable. He didn't bark at people to scare them. He barked to shake them out of their illusions. So let me bark at you now. Wake the hell up. She is not your purpose. She is not your redemption. She is not your reward. Your mission is not to win her. Your mission is to win yourself back. Every time you scroll for validation, you lose. Every time you stay up late waiting for her to come around, you lose. Every time you bend your truth to fit inside her comfort zone, you lose. And the longer you lose, the harder it becomes to remember what winning even felt like. So let's bring it back to discipline, to focus, to building your world so boldly that she either adds to it or gets out of the way. You don't need to chase, because the man who moves with purpose doesn't need to plead. He doesn't explain. He doesn't convince. He doesn't beg. He decides. That's the energy she feels but can't describe. That's the presence she notices without knowing why. It's not your cologne. It's not your haircut. It's not your clever message. It's your centeredness. It's your wholeness. It's the quiet refusal to be anything other than exactly who you are. That man, he's rare. He's magnetic. He's unstoppable. In part 6, the final part will bring it all home. We'll show you how to live as that man, not just talk like him. Because knowledge is nothing without embodiment. Part 6. From illusion to sovereignty. Becoming the man who doesn't chase. So here we are. This is the final stretch. If you've made it this far, it means something inside you is ready to change. Maybe you're tired of the games. Maybe you're sick of the silence. Maybe you've finally realized she was never the problem. Your expectations were. Your need for validation was. Your belief that love meant losing yourself. That was the real trap. But don't let this be just another wake-up call you ignore. Let this be the last time you ask for permission to feel like a man. Let's get one thing straight. You're not chasing women. You're chasing a mirror. You're looking for something in her eyes, in her words, in her touch that makes you believe you're enough. That's not love. That's a drug. That's dependency wrapped in compliments. That's ego hunger dressed in romantic poetry. And you don't need another hit of that. You need detox. You need to cut the cord between your masculinity and her attention. Because as long as your power depends on her, you'll never be free. You were not born to be chosen. You were born to choose your path, to choose your mission, to choose your identity with or without applause. And you cannot choose clearly when you're still addicted to being wanted. She's not a villain. She's not your savior either. She's just a reflection of your need, your longing, your fear of standing alone. Diogenes had none of that. He walked through crowds filthy and fearless, not because he wanted attention, but because he didn't care for it. And when Alexander the Great, the most powerful man alive, stood before him and asked, "What can I do for you?" Diogenes looked up and said, "Stand out of my sunlight." That's a man who needs nothing. That's a man who cannot be owned. That's where your power lies, in your indifference to seduction. So how do you get there? How do you go from chasing to choosing, from orbiting to building, from desperate to sovereign? Here's the path in 3 hard but necessary steps. Step 1. Face your fear of silence. Stop filling every moment with distraction. Stop treating loneliness like a disease. Turn off the noise. Delete the app. Put the phone down. Sit with your own presence and ask yourself, who am I when no one is watching? Do I respect that man? Do I listen to him? Do I follow through when he sets a goal? If not, that's your work. Because until you respect yourself in silence, no woman's praise will ever be enough. Step 2. Reclaim your mission. You've made women your mission for too long. Time to pivot. What legacy are you building? What skill are you mastering? What story are you writing? Get obsessed with that. Start showing up for your life like it's the most beautiful woman you've ever met. Treat your goals like a queen, because they will never leave you on read. They won't ghost you. They won't grow bored. They won't love you less when you show your flaws. They'll reward you every damn time you show up with effort. Step 3. Stop explaining yourself. Real power doesn't explain. It decides. If she walks away, let her. If she doesn't text back, let her. If she chooses someone else, let her. You don't have to fight for a seat at a table you built. You don't need to shrink for love that's meant to expand you. Diogenes didn't plead. He didn't convince. He didn't dance for affection. He was the standard. So become your standard. Set the bar so high that if someone wants to stand beside you, they rise to meet it or move out of the way. Let me give you one final truth. A man who does not chase isn't cold. He's not bitter. He's not broken. He's centered. He's grounded in who he is so deeply, so fully, that nothing external defines him. You don't earn your value. You remember it. You don't prove your worth. You live it. And when a woman comes along who truly sees you, she won't need your performance. She won't need your sacrifice. She'll love the man who stopped chasing, because in him she'll see something rare, not just strength, but sovereignty. So this is the last time you scroll her profile hoping for a sign. This is the last time you write a message and delete it twice. This is the last time you rehearse a version of yourself in your head that you think she'll like better. Because, starting now, you reclaim your throne. You build, you walk, and if she wants to join you, good. If not, you were never waiting. Your freedom begins the moment you stop chasing. Your power begins the moment you stop performing. Your life begins the moment you stop needing to be seen and finally see yourself. This is the way of Diogenes. And now, it's yours too. Stand up, stop chasing, start leading, and watch the world fall in line, not because you begged for it, but because you became undeniable.